Welcome to Kids Academy.
Hi and welcome to the Kids Academy chess course. My name is Robert Lazorchak and I'm a certified teacher with international and national chess teaching certifications. I will be your guide as we begin to master this great game. Now let's get to the chess. Now that we've learned about the rook, it's time to learn about the second chess piece. Today we're going to learn about the bishop. Now if you remember, rooks move on ranks and files, or another way to put it is rooks can move up, down, and side to side as far as they like. Bishops can move diagonally. So if you take the plus sign that a rook can move like on ranks and files, and you tilt it so you have an X or multiplication symbol, that's how the bishop can move. The bishop can move diagonally, and if you play checkers, then you already know what diagonal means. Checkers pieces capture and move diagonally through the corners on the slant. So let's go ahead and look at our bishop. We have a bishop here on d5, and this bishop has a lot of choices. He can move like an X, as short or as far as he wants. So this bishop can go one step, two steps. He can go all the way across the board in any of these four directions to resemble an X. He can go one step to e4. He can go all the way on the long diagonal to the corner and reach h1. Now, because this bishop moves diagonally, you'll notice that if it starts on a light square, everywhere it goes, all of its choices end on a light square. If it starts on a light, it ends on a light. Even if we gave this bishop 10 moves, even 100 moves in a row, this bishop can never, ever visit the dark squares. This bishop is always confined to half the board, to half the squares. But that's okay, because in chess, you start with two bishops. You start with a bishop on c1 on the dark squares if you're white, and a bishop on f1. So you'll always have a bishop that can theoretically visit any square on the board. Now let's practice moving this bishop. So let's use this bishop on f1. This bishop can go one step to e2, but I'm going to do kind of a far chess move. I'll put the bishop on b5, going on this diagonal. What if we wanted this bishop to go to g6? And I give you two moves. If I gave you two moves, can you figure out a path? Actually, there are two paths for this bishop to reach g6. Looking at your diagonals. Take a moment. If you need help, we can do this in reverse and take the square g6. And notice that in order to get to g6, we could first reach it by going to d3 or to e8. Can the bishop reach one of those squares? Of course, in fact, the bishop can reach both. So this bishop can go to e8 to get to g6 in two turns, or it can go diagonally down to d3 and then diagonally up. Either way, the bishop reaches g6. Just like the rook, the bishop captures the same way it moves. So if I were to put, let's see, a black pawn here, and it's white's turn, this bishop can capture the pawn. Bishops can go backwards, just like rooks. The bishop can go backwards and capture the pawn on d3. Let's see. Let's put a bishop here. We have a black bishop on the square f6. My first question is our bishop on d3 attacking? Is it aiming at the bishop on f6? The answer is no. If we look diagonally, we see that the bishop aims very close to it. The bishop passes through f5. The bishop passes through g6, but we are not aiming at f6. We also know this very quickly that the bishop is not attacking the other bishop because the bishop on f6 is on the opposite color. And this bishop on a light square can never, ever, ever attack a dark square. Now, a useful tip in the future, if your king is being harassed, if your pieces are being harassed by a bishop on a light square, you can guarantee their safety by putting them on a dark square, and that bishop would never be able to attack them. Okay, let's have another quiz. Let's see, I'll put a rook here. I will put a rook here. Which rook can the bishop capture? Go ahead and take a moment, look at your diagonals. Remember, starting on a light, ending on a light. Well, of course, we can't go up. This is how a rook would capture along the file, but we can go diagonally down and capture the rook on f1. Let's have a game that looks like this. Okay, which rook can the bishop capture here? Both rooks are on light squares. That makes it a little bit more difficult. But if we look at our diagonals, we can see if we go diagonally up to the right, diagonally down to the right, diagonally down to the left, and diagonally up to the left, there is only one rook that we're aiming at. Just because this rook is on a light square doesn't mean we can capture it. We're not aiming directly at it. Bishops move in straight lines along the diagonal. But this bishop is aiming at the rook on b5, and we can move it diagonally to capture. Last thing about the bishop, just like a rook, bishops cannot jump over pieces. So if we put a black rook here, and we put, let's see, we'll put a white rook here. Our bishop on b5 cannot capture that black rook. We're aiming at it, that's true. It's on the same diagonal, starting on a light, ending on a light. But there is a problem. Our white rook is in the way, and we can't jump over. The bishop can go as far as it wants until it either runs into its own piece, at which point it would have to stop, or once it captures a piece, the bishop also stops. Remember, you can never capture more than one piece per turn. So if you capture a piece, that bishop stops and replaces it. If you run into your own piece, the bishop would stop the square before it. So let's review what we learned about the bishop today. Bishops can move like an X along the diagonal. That's now our third chess vocabulary word, rank, file, diagonal in terms of movement. They can move short or they can move as far as they want as long as they have a clear path. Once they capture a piece, they must stop and they cannot jump over pieces. So if a piece is blocking them, they would have to stop the square before. You have two bishops to start a game. You have a bishop on c1, c8 if you're black, f1 for white, and f8 if you're black, a light square bishop and a dark square bishop. They are one of the fastest pieces in chess, along with the rook and the queen, and a very strong piece. The next time we meet, we will be talking about the knight, a lot of chess kids' favorite piece, a lot of young chess players' favorite piece. And I look forward to sharing that video with you. Thank you and goodbye.
Subscribe to our channel to stay updated on new videos. Find links to our apps in the comments below.